very much. Thank you. And good afternoon. This afternoon we're going to be looking at managing time, time management. Time is an interesting subject, but of course time management is a little bit of a misnomer, because you cannot manage time. Of course, time's going to go on whether you like it or not. What you can do only is to manage your portion, your allocation of that time. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Managing your portion of the time that is allocated to you. Time management's fascinating subject, time. They say time is money. Well, I think time is far more important than money. But let's just imagine time is money. Let's imagine that you get given 86,400 Rand in the morning. 86,400 Rand you're given. And the deal is this. You can hang on to that money for 24 hours. You can do whatever you like with it. You manage it. You invest it. You hang on to it for 24 hours. At the end of those 24 hours, you have to give that money back. But you can keep whatever you make from that money. Now, think of that for a second. You've got 86,400 Rand. Would you manage that money carefully? Would you? Sure bet your life you would, wouldn't you? You'd be very careful what you did with that money. You'd look at it, you'd invest it, you'd spend time looking at it, working out where the best place to put it is. But you don't get 86,400 Rand every day. What you do get is 86,400 seconds every single day. And the deal is this, you can hang on to those 86,400 seconds for 24 hours, but you have to give them back when you finish them. Nonetheless, at the end of those 24 hours, you get to keep whatever you make out of those seconds. They say time is money. I think it's more important than money. Nonetheless, if it helps you when you're considering your time, if it helps, think about your time as money. And think about managing it in the same way as you manage your money. You see, time is a resource. Just like your other resources, time is a resource. Probably your most important resource, actually. Time is a resource. Just like your other resources, you should be managing it. You've got your resources like your money, your people, your factories, your plant, your other things in your business. These are resources. Time should be managed in the same way. You see, the problem with time is it's finite. Instantly perishable. What you don't use today, you cannot use tomorrow. That's it. If you don't use it today, it's gone. So time is instantly perishable. Nonetheless, it is easy to manage if you take into account a few simple techniques, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. A few simple techniques which will dramatically help you manage your money better. Before I get into that, though, I should ask the question, how many people in this room reckon they're good at time management? Show of hands, any people good at time management here? Okay, nobody. Well, you're not surprised because you wouldn't be here if you were good at time management, would you? You wouldn't be wasting your time, quite right. So, let me tell you why you might not be so good at time management. And it's all to do with something over here. Let me show you. It's all to do with this little thing here. This is a brain. Look, this is not my brain, I must tell you. It's actually, I borrowed this. This is my secretary's brain. Well, she doesn't use it while I'm away, you see, so... no, it's actually, it's actually not a real brain, it's a plastic brain. And I brought along a plastic brain today to demonstrate perhaps why you may not be so good at time management. I thought I might bring a real brain. I thought that'd be quite cool, you know, to kick it around for a bit. And I sourced a brain at the local university here. And I rang them up and I said, look, I'd really like to borrow a brain to take to a time management course. Could I do that? And the guy said, we've got plenty of brains, you know, the jars, things, that'd be fine. The problem is, however, you need a license to carry body parts. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I've been carrying body parts all my life. I didn't know I needed a license for it. So, but this is a brain, and it's a plastic brain, as you see. And you can also see that the brain actually drops into two halves. Now, interestingly enough, if you were to take your brain out of your skull, it would also drop into two halves if it wasn't for this thing here, which is called the corpus callosum. 52 kilometers of tissue going backwards and forwards, communicating one side of the brain with the other. Without that, the brain would literally drop in half. And in fact, in some cases of severe epilepsy, they sever the corpus callosum. And the patient survives that. So in fact, our brain works very definitely in two independent halves. The interesting thing about the two halves of the brain is that they do different thinking inside each half of the brain. On the right-hand side of the brain here, this is where you do most of your creative thinking. Creative thought processes happen in the right-hand side of the brain. In the left-hand side of the brain, this is where you do most of your logical thinking. Now, interestingly enough, we tend to be either right-brained or left-brained, which means we tend to be either creative thinkers or logical thinkers. Now, depending upon whether you're left-brained or right-brained will have an effect on the kind of work you do. If you tend to be right-brained, you will tend to end up with a creative job. Chefs, artists, poets, salespeople, these tend to be more creative jobs, and they tend to have people in them who are right-brained. If you are left-brained, you will tend to end up with more logical work. Things like accountants, statisticians, those sort of people tend to be left-brained. Now, time management is very definitely a left-brained process. And if you tend to be more right-brained than left-brained, you will end up in a right-brained job, and you probably won't be naturally so good at time management as if you were left-brained. People who are left-brained tend to instinctively be better at time management than people who are right-brained. However, nonetheless, all is not lost. Interestingly enough, you can develop the left-hand side of your brain. Let me give an example. Let's imagine you don't go to the gym. You don't go to the gym. For 6 months, you don't go to the gym. When you go back to the gym after a break for 6 months, how do you feel? Sore, don't you? It's painful, isn't it? In fact, when you get to my age, if you haven't been for 6 months, don't go back, because it's really sore. However, after a while, if you go back a few weeks' time, you feel less sore. Look, it never gets totally painless, but you do feel less sore. You get used to it, you get stronger at it, and it's exactly the same with your brain. If you tend to be more creative, it probably means you haven't used the part of your brain that manages time as much as perhaps you should have done. And the techniques I'm going to talk to you about today, might be a little bit painful to start off with. But when you get into the system, and it's only a matter of 5 or 6 days, when you get into the system, it ceases to be painful and starts to be pleasurable, because you're managing your time much better. So I'm going to ask you to apply the techniques that I'm talking about here for 5 or 6 days, something like that. You get into the rhythm of it, you'll find it's a very much easier thing to do.